We are starting to get a bigger picture of just how big that storm was that swept through our region yesterday.
The structural damage was relatively small compared to past incidents, but the losses will all be tallied at the end of the year toward a growing list of.
The explosion happened during morning rush hour. Traffic was moving normally on Penn Street. Commuters sipped coffee. School buses made their rounds. Then, at 7:52 a.m., the asphalt buckled. Witnesses described a sound first. Not a crack, not a rumble. A deep hydraulic surge, like something massive forcing its way through a sealed pipe. Then, the street split. Dark water, thick with sediment, almost black, shot upward in a column. Maria Gonzalez was dropping her daughter at the corner when it happened. The water came up so fast, I thought a tanker truck had exploded underground. But there was no fire, just this pressure, like the earth was vomiting. The column reached 12 feet before spreading outward, flooding the intersection within seconds. Cars hydroplaned, drivers abandoned vehicles. And here's what made emergency responders go quiet when they arrived. The water was warm, nearly 80 degrees, in March, in Pennsylvania. City engineers expected to find a burst main, standard infrastructure failure, aging pipes beneath an old city. But when they excavated the rupture site, they found something else. The water hadn't come from municipal pipes. It came from a limestone aquifer 340 feet below the surface, an aquifer that had been stable and sealed for thousands of years. The pressure that forced it through solid bedrock and asphalt, they're still calculating it, but preliminary estimates suggest it would require force equivalent to a controlled demolition charge. No drilling had occurred in that area. No seismic activity was recorded. The aquifer simply erupted. "We've never seen groundwater behave this way," said a geological consultant who requested anonymity. "Water doesn't build pressure like that naturally, not without a trigger." But Redding wasn't looking for triggers. They were looking up. Because while engineers were still trying to understand what happened beneath Penn Street, passengers aboard American Airlines Flight 2847 were recording something above Indiana that made the ground rupture seem almost normal by comparison. The flight was cruising at 35,000 feet, halfway between Indianapolis and Fort Wayne. Clear skies, minimal turbulence, standard morning flight. Then passenger Derek Williamson noticed something outside his window that made him grab his phone. Suspended in the clouds, perfectly still while everything around it drifted, was a flawless blue ring. Not a circle of clouds shaped vaguely round, a precise geometric ring, electric blue, vivid against the white and gray surrounding it. And it wasn't moving. "I watched it for 4 minutes," Williamson said in his now viral TikTok post. "The clouds around it were blowing east. You could see them moving. But this ring just stayed, like it was painted on glass." Other passengers confirmed it. 17 people on that flight recorded the same formation, same position, same unnatural stillness. Meteorologists scrambled for explanations. A rare ice crystal formation called a fall streak hole. Temperature inversions creating optical illusions. Contrails caught at unusual angles. But none of those explanations account for what happened next. At 8:18 a.m., 26 minutes after the Redding eruption, the ring disappeared. Not gradually, not by dissipating into surrounding clouds. It simply vanished, as if someone had turned off a switch. And in that exact moment, 340 miles south, the sky over Kentucky began raining death. Residents of Bardstown woke to the sound like hail hitting rooftops, but when they stepped outside, they found their lawns carpeted with birds. Thousands of them. Blackbirds, starlings, grackles, all dead, wings twisted at wrong angles, eyes open, no visible injuries. "My grandson started crying," said Barbara Chen, a retired teacher. "He thought the world was ending. I didn't know what to tell him because I was thinking the same thing." Animal control arrived to find carcasses covering a 3-block radius.
not scattered randomly, concentrated, as if an invisible net had been dropped from directly above. The USDA performed necropsies on 47 specimens. Their findings were released in a terse 2-paragraph statement. Internal trauma consistent with sudden atmospheric pressure change. No toxins detected. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. But here's what the statement didn't say. The trauma occurred while the birds were in flight. Something in the air had crushed them. Dr. Alan Kimura, an ornithologist not involved in the official investigation, reviewed the necropsy photos. This is what you'd see if a bird flew into a jet engine or hit a window at high speed. But these birds show uniform damage, all of them. That suggests they encountered the same force at the same time, simultaneously. He paused in the interview, choosing his words carefully. I don't know what could do that to an entire flock in open sky. By noon, social media was connecting the dots. 3 events, 3 states, the same morning, the same narrow time frame. Water erupting from sealed earth, a motionless ring in the sky. Birds crushed by invisible force. Skeptics dismissed it. Coincidence, confirmation bias, people seeing patterns where none exist. But the pattern didn't stop. It accelerated. On March 19th, 4 days later, a UPS driver in Salem, Oregon, recorded his dashboard camera footage and uploaded it with shaking hands. The video shows him driving through the Willamette National Forest on Route 22, normal delivery route. He'd driven it hundreds of times. Then the forest lit up. A column of pure white light descended from the cloud cover, touching down in a clearing roughly 200 yards from the road. Not a spotlight, not lightning, a sustained beam, motionless, silent. I watched it for 4 minutes, Williamson said in his now viral TikTok post. The clouds around it were blowing east. You could see them moving, but this ring just stayed, like it was painted on glass. Forest Service rangers reached the site within an hour. What they found matched what satellite imaging would later confirm, a perfect circle of compressed earth, 23 feet in diameter. The ground within it was warm to the touch, not scorched, not burned, just warm.
Moses was a Levite, born a Hebrew slave in Egypt. David was from the tribe of Judah, a shepherd boy from Bethlehem. Every prophet, every priest, every king that mattered, all of them were sons of Israel. When foreigners tried to rule them, what happened? Pharaoh tried to enslave them. They fled Egypt. Nebuchadnezzar tried to control them. They resisted for generations. Antiochus Epiphanes desecrated their temple. They went to war and won. Rome conquered them. They revolted twice and scattered across the earth rather than submit. This is a people who would rather die than accept a Gentile ruler. So here's the question no one asks. If the Antichrist is some European politician with no Jewish blood, no connection to their covenant, no claim to David's throne, why would Israel follow him? Why would they let him broker their peace treaties? Why would they allow him to rebuild their temple? Why would Orthodox Jews who have rejected false messiahs for 2,000 years suddenly accept some random leader from Brussels or Rome? They wouldn't. It doesn't fit their theology. It doesn't fit their history. It doesn't fit anything Scripture tells us about how Israel operates. But what if we've had it backwards this whole time? What if the Antichrist isn't an outsider at all? What if he comes as one of them? Picture this. A man rises with documented Jewish ancestry. Genealogists trace his bloodline back through the centuries. He has legitimate claim to David's throne. He speaks their language. He knows their scriptures. He understands their pain after thousands of years of persecution. He doesn't conquer Israel. He wins them over. He doesn't attack the temple. He rebuilds it. He doesn't oppose their covenant. He claims to fulfill it. And when he offers them peace, protection, and the restoration of everything they've lost, why wouldn't they trust him? Jesus himself warned about this exact moment. John chapter 5, verse 43, he said to the Jewish leaders, I came in my Father's name, and ye did not receive me. But if another comes in his own name, him ye will receive. Israel rejected the true Messiah, but they will accept the counterfeit. Not because they're foolish, but because the deception will be perfect. It will be rooted in their own history, their own bloodline, their own expectations. He'll look like everything they've been waiting for. But deceiving Israel is only half the equation. The Bible says the Antichrist deceives the whole earth, every nation, every people, billions who have no connection to Jewish prophecy. How does a Jewish leader from a cursed tribe fool the entire planet? The answer involves 1.8 billion people and a prophecy most Christians have never heard of. Before we go further, we need to look at something most people overlook: the geography. Daniel chapter 9, verse 26 gives us a crucial clue about the Antichrist. It says, "The people of the prince who is to come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary." For centuries, scholars read this and pointed at Rome. Makes sense, right? Roman armies destroyed Jerusalem in 70 AD. Roman soldiers burned the temple to the ground, so the Antichrist must come from a revived Roman Empire. Case closed. Look to Europe. But here's what they missed. The Roman soldiers who destroyed Jerusalem weren't Italian. They weren't European at all. History tells us exactly who they were. The 10th Legion, the 5th Legion, the 15th Legion. These were the forces that besieged Jerusalem and tore down the temple. And where did Rome recruit these soldiers? Syria, Arabia, the eastern provinces of the empire. These weren't Romans from Italy. These were Middle Eastern fighters serving under a Roman flag. So when Daniel says, "the people of the prince who is to come," he's not pointing to Europe. He's pointing east, to the same lands now dominated by one religion, the same territories where 1.8 billion people are waiting for a prophesied savior. And this is where everything converges. In Islamic teaching, a figure called Al-Mahdi is coming. His name means the guided one. According to their prophecy, he will appear during a time of global chaos. He will unite the Muslim world under one banner. He will establish justice across the earth. He will bring 7 years of peace. For Shia Muslims, he's the 12th Imam. They believe he's already alive, hidden, waiting to reveal himself. For Sunni Muslims, he's a future leader who will emerge when the world is at its darkest. But both groups agree on one thing.
When the sun stopped, you run out of natural explanations. Posted at astronomer turns believer. I've studied stellar mechanics for 30 years, built career on predictable cosmic order. What I witnessed this morning doesn't exist in that order. It exists outside it. And if the sun can pause, then nothing is beyond the reach of whatever is orchestrating this. Within hours, similar reports came from across the globe, different time zones, same phenomenon, the sun pausing, holding position, then resuming, worldwide, simultaneous, witnessed by billions. And with that global confirmation, something broke. The last barrier of skepticism, the final wall of rationalization. This wasn't American weather. This wasn't regional disaster. This was planetary, universal, a message being delivered to the entire world at once. At 8:15 a.m., the pulse beneath Yellowstone changed. The 11-second rhythm that had continued through the night suddenly accelerated. 5 seconds, 3 seconds, then continuous vibration. Seismographs went red, monitoring stations evacuated, emergency protocols activated. The caldera is responding to something, said a USGS emergency coordinator. Not from below, from above, like it's being activated remotely. But there was no eruption, no volcanic event, just the pulse, growing stronger, building intensity. At 9:22 a.m., every sealed chamber site cracked open simultaneously. Nevada, Utah, Arizona. The concrete barriers fractured. Security perimeters were breached, not by people, but by the earth itself, forcing the openings wider. "It's like they're being unsealed," said Dale Hutchins, watching from a safe distance in Nevada, "like whatever was locked inside is being released." Federal response teams mobilized, but before they could reach the sites, something emerged from the openings. Not objects, light, beams of light projecting upward from each location. Vertical columns, brilliant, visible for miles, all pointing skyward. At 10:44 a.m., the Mississippi River stopped flowing entirely. Complete stillness from Minnesota to Louisiana. The entire river system went motionless. "It's not frozen," reported Jake Morrison. "It's not blocked. The water just stopped moving, like someone pressed pause. Fish suspended in the current, boats dead in the water, barges immobile. The great river, lifeline of the continent, became a static lake." At 11:17 a.m., animals began moving again, but not fleeing this time, returning, converging toward specific locations. Birds by the thousands, descending on empty fields, forming massive gatherings, different species sitting together, silent. Deer emerging from forests, standing in clearings, motionless, watching the sky. Marine life approaching coastlines, dolphins, whales, fish schools, all moving toward shore, clustering, waiting. "They're assembling," said Dr. Sarah Chen, watching footage from multiple locations, "like they're gathering for something, some event they know is coming." At 12:03 p.m., the sky began changing color, not darkening, shifting, the blue taking on violet tones, then deeper, purple, indigo, colors that shouldn't exist in Earth's atmosphere. "The light spectrum is wrong," said Dr. Patricia Nean from her home, still recording. "We're seeing wavelengths that don't match solar radiation. Something is filtering through, or something is projecting downward." The color deepened, the sky becoming darker purple, almost black-violet, but not dark, luminous, glowing with internal light. And in that transformed sky, at 12:47 p.m., they appeared. Lights, thousands of them, descending through the violet atmosphere, not falling, descending with control, purpose, information. "They're not meteorites," said every pilot in the air. "They're not satellites. They're coming down in organized patterns." The lights descended to specific altitudes and stopped, hovering, positioned across the entire continental United States, visible from every state, every city, every town. Millions looked up and saw them, brilliant points of light, arranged in geometric precision, covering the sky like a grid. And then they pulsed, all at once, a single flash of brilliant white light that illuminated the entire nation. People fell to their knees, not from force, from overwhelming recognition, the sense of standing before something vast, ancient, holy. "I felt it in my chest," said Rebecca Ahn in Chicago, "like my heart synchronized with the pulse, like something was rewriting my internal rhythm. I wasn't afraid, I was aware. For the first time in my life, truly aware." The pulse repeated, every 11 seconds, the same rhythm that had come from beneath Yellowstone, now coming from above, from the lights, from the sky itself. Earth and heaven pulsing together, in synchronization, in unity. At 1:15 p.m., every electronic device simultaneously displayed the same message: phones, computers, televisions, digital billboards, navigation systems, not text, a symbol, the same geometric pattern that had appeared on the beaches, circle with intersecting cross, glowing, pulsing with the 11-second rhythm. No one had broadcast it, no signal could be traced. It simply appeared everywhere at once. "Someone is speaking," posted Last Skeptic Standing. "I don't know who, I don't know how, but this is communication, direct, undeniable, and we're being told something simple. Pay attention, because what comes next is final." At 2:33 p.m., the figure appeared again,
not in one location, everywhere, in the violet sky, above every city, every town, every populated area. Massive, radiant, human-shaped, arms extended, surrounded by light that hurt to look at directly. And in that transformed sky, at 12:47 p.m., there was sound. Not words, not language, but a tone, deep, resonant, vibrating through the ground, through the air, through human bodies. A tone that carried one unmistakable meaning. Behold. I understood it, without language, without translation. I just knew. We were being shown something, someone, and the showing was both invitation and warning.
When the sun stopped, you run out of natural explanations, posted @astronomer-turns-believer. I've studied stellar mechanics for 30 years, built career on predictable cosmic order. What I witnessed this morning doesn't exist in that order. It exists outside it. And if the sun can pause, then nothing is beyond the reach of whatever is orchestrating this. Within hours, similar reports came from across the globe, different time zones, same phenomenon, the sun pausing, holding position, then resuming, worldwide, simultaneous, witnessed by billions. And with that global confirmation, something broke. The last barrier of skepticism, the final wall of rationalization. This wasn't American weather. This wasn't regional disaster. This was planetary, universal, a message being delivered to the entire world at once. At 8:15 a.m., the pulse beneath Yellowstone changed. The 11-second rhythm that had continued through the night suddenly accelerated. 5 seconds, 3 seconds, then continuous vibration. Seismographs went red, monitoring stations evacuated, emergency protocols activated. The caldera is responding to something, said a USGS emergency coordinator. Not from below, from above, like it's being activated remotely. But there was no eruption, no volcanic event, just the pulse, growing stronger, building intensity. At 9:22 a.m., every sealed chamber site cracked open simultaneously. Nevada, Utah, Arizona. The concrete barriers fractured. Security perimeters were breached, not by people, but by the earth itself, forcing the openings wider. It's like they're being unsealed, said Dale Hutchins, watching from a safe distance in Nevada, like whatever was locked inside is being released. Federal response teams mobilized, but before they could reach the sites, something emerged from the openings. Not objects, light, beams of light projecting upward from each location. Vertical columns, brilliant, visible for miles, all pointing skyward. At 10:44 a.m., the Mississippi River stopped flowing entirely. Complete stillness from Minnesota to Louisiana. The entire river system went motionless. It's not frozen, reported Jake Morrison. It's not blocked. The water just stopped moving, like someone pressed pause. Fish suspended in the current, boats dead in the water, barges immobile. The great river, lifeline of the continent, became a static lake. At 11:17 a.m., animals began moving again, but not fleeing this time, returning, converging toward specific locations. Birds by the thousands, descending on empty fields, forming massive gatherings, different species sitting together, silent. Deer emerging from forests, standing in clearings, motionless, watching the sky. Marine life approaching coastlines, dolphins, whales, fish schools, all moving toward shore, clustering, waiting. They're assembling, said Dr. Sarah Chen, watching footage from multiple locations, like they're gathering for something, some event they know is coming. At 12:03 p.m., the sky began changing color, not darkening, shifting, the blue taking on violet tones, then deeper, purple, indigo, colors that shouldn't exist in Earth's atmosphere.
"The light spectrum is wrong," said Dr. Patricia Nian from her home, still recording. "We're seeing wavelengths that don't match solar radiation. Something is filtering through, or something is projecting downward." The color deepened, the sky becoming darker purple, almost black-violet, but not dark, luminous, glowing with internal light. And in that transformed sky, at 12:47 p.m., they appeared, lights, thousands of them, descending through the violet atmosphere, not falling, descending with control, purpose, information. "They're not meteorites," said every pilot in the air. "They're not satellites. They're coming down in organized patterns." The lights descended to specific altitudes and stopped, hovering, positioned across the entire continental United States, visible from every state, every city, every town. Millions looked up and saw them, brilliant points of light, arranged in geometric precision, covering the sky like a grid. And then they pulsed, all at once, a single flash of brilliant white light that illuminated the entire nation. People fell to their knees, not from force, from overwhelming recognition, the sense of standing before something vast, ancient, holy. "I felt it in my chest," said Rebecca Ahn in Chicago, "like my heart synchronized with the pulse, like something was rewriting my internal rhythm. I wasn't afraid, I was aware, for the first time in my life, truly aware." The pulse repeated, every 11 seconds, the same rhythm that had come from beneath Yellowstone, now coming from above, from the lights, from the sky itself. Earth and heaven pulsing together, in synchronization, in unity. At 1:15 p.m., every electronic device simultaneously displayed the same message: phones, computers, televisions, digital billboards, navigation systems, not text, a symbol, the same geometric pattern that had appeared on the beaches, circle with intersecting cross, glowing, pulsing with the 11-second rhythm. No one had broadcast it, no signal could be traced. It simply appeared everywhere at once. "Someone is speaking," posted Last Skeptic Standing. "I don't know who, I don't know how, but this is communication, direct, undeniable, and we're being told something simple. Pay attention, because what comes next is final." At 2:33 p.m., the figure appeared again, not in one location, everywhere, in the violet sky, above every city, every town, every populated area. Massive, radiant, human-shaped, arms extended, surrounded by light that hurt to look at directly. And in that transformed sky, at 12:47 p.m., there was sound. Not words, not language, but a tone, deep, resonant, vibrating through the ground, through the air, through human bodies. A tone that carried one unmistakable meaning: behold. I understood it, without language, without translation. I just knew. We were being shown something, someone, and the showing was both invitation and warning.
But no message followed, just silence. 30 seconds of dead air. Then normal programming resumed. "We didn't activate those systems," said an EBS coordinator. "The signal came from somewhere else. We're investigating." But there was no time to investigate, because at 11:02 p.m., witnesses across the continental United States reported seeing the same thing in the night sky. A figure, massive, formed in aurora-like light, stretching across hundreds of miles, visible from Texas to Montana. Human-shaped, arms extended, surrounded by radiance, appearing in the northern sky where auroras don't typically reach. "It looked like the Chicago radar figure," said Thomas Brewster, who'd witnessed the earlier event, "but 1,000 times larger and visible with human eyes, not on radar, right there in the sky." The figure remained visible for 18 minutes, long enough for millions to see, record, share. Then it faded, slowly, dissolving into darkness.
And in that moment, as the figure disappeared, something shifted in collective awareness, an unspoken understanding, a recognition that couldn't be argued away or rationalized. This wasn't disaster. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't random catastrophe. This was announcement. This was revelation. This was something, someone, making their presence undeniable. I've spent 40 years as an atheist, posted at lifelongskeptic_1984, mocked believers, dismissed faith as psychological weakness, trusted only in science and reason. But I watched that figure tonight. I saw it with my own eyes, and I felt something I've never felt before. Recognition, like seeing someone I'd been told about but never believed existed. I don't know what comes next, but I know I was wrong about everything. The post received 4.1 million likes, 1.3 million shares, and tens of thousands of comments echoing the same sentiment. I felt it too. I saw him. We were warned. The prophecies are real. Time is up. Emergency management systems were paralyzed, not from infrastructure failure, from overwhelming simultaneous demand. Millions calling, asking the same questions. What's happening? What do we do? Is this the end? Operators had no answers, no protocols, no guidance. Because how do you respond when water defies gravity, birds fall dead en masse, the sky goes dark at noon, rivers reverse, the earth pulses with artificial rhythm, and a figure appears in the heavens, visible to millions? How do you explain that? You can't. You can only acknowledge it. And in that acknowledgement, everything changes. Dr. Patricia Nguyen appeared on national television at 1:47 a.m., unscheduled, unscripted. She simply walked onto a news set and started talking. "We've been lying," she said, not maliciously, but out of commitment to materialist explanations. "We've been trying to fit impossible observations into natural models, and we've failed. Because what's happening isn't natural, it's supernatural, it's intentional, it's coordinated, and it's accelerating." The anchor tried to interrupt. Nguyen continued. "I'm a physicist. I've built my career on empirical data and mathematical models. But the data is showing us something our models can't contain: intelligence, design, purpose. We're witnessing communication from something beyond our understanding, and the message is clear: prepare, because transition is imminent." She stood and walked off the set. The interview ended there. Within hours, she was removed from her university position. Statements were issued distancing institutions from her remarks. But it didn't matter, because millions had heard her, and millions agreed. The acceleration continued through the night. More events, more impossibilities, building, compounding, overwhelming every system designed to respond. By dawn on May 23rd, a new reality had settled over America. Normal was gone. Explanation was exhausted. Certainty had collapsed. And in its place stood a simple recognition. Something was here. Something had arrived. Something was making itself known through creation itself. Whether people called it God, divine judgment, cosmic intervention, or something else entirely, didn't change the reality. The signs were undeniable. The pattern was complete. The convergence had occurred. And now, only one question remained. What happens next? The answer was coming, fast, and it wouldn't arrive as speculation or theory. It would arrive as reality, undeniable, inescapable, final.
This is Revelation 6, posted at Scripture Student 24. The seals being opened, not symbolically, literally. Earth, sky, sea, living creatures, all responding at once. This is what the opening of seals looks like. Counterarguments flooded in. It's climate change. It's coincidence. It's psychological pattern seeking. But the counter-arguments grew weaker, because climate change doesn't make hail glow. Coincidence doesn't synchronize 6 events across 6 states to a 9-hour window. Pattern seeking doesn't create geometric symbols in sand. Something was orchestrating this. Whether people accepted that or not, the coordination was undeniable. Dr. Marcus Webb, the meteorologist who'd quit after the Chicago crown figure, posted a video that night. It was viewed 8.7 million times. "I spent my career explaining weather," he said, sitting in his home office, "making the complex understandable, fitting observations into established models. But I can't do that anymore, because what we're seeing doesn't fit. It's not weather, it's not atmospheric anomaly, it's communication, it's demonstration, it's a message being written across creation itself, and the message is simple. Time is short. Wake up, pay attention, because what comes next won't be subtle." He paused, visibly emotional. "I don't know what's coming, but I know this. When earth, water, fire, air, and living creatures all respond at the same time, when ancient warnings surface and modern science fails to explain basic observations, when millions of people witness the impossible simultaneously, we're not in normal times. We're in transition, and the transition is accelerating." The video ended there, abrupt, no conclusion, no call to action, just a statement and a warning. It was shared across every platform, commented on by scientists, theologians, skeptics, and believers. But the most common response wasn't debate, it was agreement. "He's right," posted @formerskeptic24. "Something is happening, fast, and we're running out of time to figure out what it means." That sentiment echoed across millions of posts, from people who'd never agreed on anything before, uniting in one simple recognition. The convergence was real, the pattern was undeniable, and whatever it was building toward was close. Because on May 22nd, the day after the convergence, the acceleration began, and when it started, there was no time left to prepare. May 22nd, 2024. The events didn't stop, they multiplied. At 4:17 a.m., coastal glow patterns reappeared, not just in Maine, across the entire eastern seaboard, from Florida to Maine. Thousands of miles, simultaneous geometric symbols glowing in wet sand. Park services, coast guards, and marine biologists were overwhelmed. There weren't enough teams to investigate even a fraction of the sites. "It's everywhere," said Dr. Sarah Chen, coordinating from NOAA headquarters. "Every beach, every tide line, same patterns, same timing, same precision." At 6:44 a.m., groundwater eruptions occurred in 7 cities, not just Redding, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Detroit, Milwaukee, Indianapolis, Cincinnati. All within a 2-hour window, all without seismic cause. Water bursting through pavement, flooding streets, dark, warm water from deep aquifers. Infrastructure couldn't handle it. Emergency systems were overwhelmed. Millions of people affected simultaneously. "We're not prepared for this," admitted a FEMA coordinator in a leaked briefing. "We have protocols for single disasters, localized events. But when 7 major cities experience the same catastrophe at once, we don't have the resources. We can't be everywhere." At 9:15 a.m., bird deaths resumed, not in 17 states, in 42. Coast to coast, millions more birds falling from the sky without cause, covering streets, fields, parking lots, overwhelming every municipal service. "We haven't even finished cleaning up from the first die-off," said a public works director in Tulsa. "Now it's happening again, worse, and we have no explanation, no guidance, no plan." At 11:33 a.m., multiple rivers began behaving abnormally. Not just the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Ohio, the Columbia, the Colorado. Flow rates fluctuating wildly, reversals, stillness, surges, unpredictable behavior across major waterways. "We've lost predictive capability," said Jake Morrison. "Water systems are behaving erratically. We can't model it.
can't forecast it, can't manage it. At 2:08 p.m., the sky darkened again, not over one city, over 12 states. From the Midwest through the South, daylight dimming to twilight in minutes, millions experiencing simultaneous darkness. And this time, the lights in the sky weren't subtle. They were brilliant, dozens of them, hundreds, moving in complex patterns, formations that defied aerodynamic principles. They're not aircraft, they're not satellites, they're not anything I recognize, and they're moving in ways that violate physics. Air traffic control confirmed. We have no radar contact, no transponder signals, but visual confirmation from multiple aircraft. The objects are real. At 5:42 p.m., seismic activity spiked across the western United States. Not one earthquake, dozens, swarms, concentrated near previously discovered chamber sites. Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, all experiencing simultaneous tremors. The chamber locations are activating, said Dr. Elijah Roth, the linguist who'd translated the Utah inscriptions. I don't know what that means, but the sites that were sealed are responding, all of them, at once. At 7:19 p.m., Yellowstone's seismic monitors detected something unprecedented. Not an earthquake, not volcanic activity, a pulse, a rhythmic vibration emanating from beneath the caldera, repeating every 11 seconds, consistent, measurable, artificial. This isn't natural geological. This is a signal. Something is generating a regular pulse beneath Yellowstone, and we have no natural explanation. The pulse continued, hour after hour, unchanging rhythm, broadcasting from below. At 9:47 p.m., emergency broadcast systems across 6 states activated without authorization. Screens interrupted regular programming, radios cut to emergency tones.
When the natural world begins displaying organized patterns beyond biological explanation, when geometry appears in sand without hands to draw it, when light forms symbols that fade before they can be analyzed, it resembles communication more than coincidence. And the message seemed clear. Pay attention. Time is short. What's coming won't wait. The coastal symbols continued appearing through mid-May. Then, on May 19th, they stopped. Not gradually, not by fading over several nights. They simply didn't appear. Park rangers and scientists waited, cameras positioned, equipment ready. Nothing. Dark beaches, normal tides, no glow, no patterns. It was as if whoever or whatever had been drawing them had finished, the message delivered, the announcement complete. But the silence didn't bring relief. It brought tension. Because when a warning stops, it usually means the warned event is imminent. And across America, every impossible event that had been occurring in isolation was beginning to happen simultaneously. The convergence had arrived. May 21st, 2024, the day everything happened at once. It started at 6:14 a.m. Pacific Time, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake near the Nevada-Utah border, not catastrophic, but significant, and in exactly the location where the sealed chambers had been discovered. The quake reopened fissures that authorities had filled with concrete, ground that had been stabilized, fractured again, and this time the openings were larger. Hikers in the area reported seeing light emanating from the cracks, not reflected sunlight, light from below, as if something beneath the surface was illuminated. It looked like the earth was glowing from the inside, said a witness who requested anonymity, like there were lights underground. Federal response was immediate. The area was cleared, no-fly zone expanded, armed security increased. But while authorities secured Nevada, something else was happening in Oklahoma. At 7:33 a.m. Central Time, another hailstorm struck. Same region as the April bombardment, same impossible size, baseball-sized ice falling with artillery force. But this time, witnesses reported something additional. The hail glowed, faintly, blue-white light visible inside the ice. I picked one up after it stopped,
said Jennifer Okoye, still living in temporary housing from the first storm. And I could see light inside it, like it was lit from within. When it melted, the light went out, but while it was solid, it glowed. She wasn't alone. Dozens of reports, people collecting the hail, filming it, showing translucent ice with internal luminescence. Meteorologists had no explanation. Ice doesn't generate light. It doesn't contain light sources. Yet the footage was undeniable. Glowing hail, falling from the sky, captured on hundreds of devices. At 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time, the Mississippi River began slowing again. Flow rate monitors detected the shift immediately. Not a full reversal this time, but significant reduction. The river approaching stillness. We're seeing the same pressure patterns as April, reported Jake Morrison at the Corps of Engineers. Water is trying to move upstream again. We're monitoring closely. The river didn't fully reverse, but it stopped flowing normally, reducing to a crawl, as if something was restraining it. At 11:02 a.m. Mountain Time, wildlife cameras in Yellowstone captured footage that went viral within minutes. A massive herd of elk, estimated at over 2,000 animals, moving together, not grazing, not migrating seasonally, fleeing, running full speed across the Lamar Valley, heading east, away from the caldera. I've worked in Yellowstone 19 years. I've never seen elk move like that. They were terrified, running from something. Seismic monitors showed no unusual activity beneath the caldera, no apparent danger, but the elk ran anyway, and they weren't alone. Bison herds joined them, smaller mammals scattered, birds took flight in massive flocks, all heading east, all moving at maximum speed. Every species was reacting simultaneously. That only happens when something fundamental changes, when survival instinct overrides everything else. At 1:15 p.m. Pacific Time, pilots over Oregon reported the same phenomenon they'd seen in April, a column of light descending from cloud cover, touching the forest. But this time, it didn't appear in a remote clearing. It appeared directly over the Willamette Forest headquarters. "We watched it from the parking lot," said a Forest Service employee. "A beam of light maybe 30 feet across, perfectly vertical, touching the ground maybe 100 yards away, dead silent, no sound at all." The column remained for 3 minutes, then vanished. When rangers reached the spot, they found the same evidence as before: compressed earth, elevated electromagnetic readings, vegetation with paused cellular activity. But this time, there was something else, an object, small, metallic, partially buried in the center of the circle. It looked manufactured, smooth surfaces, seams, not natural, not modern either, something old. The object was immediately secured by federal agents who arrived within an hour. The ranger was debriefed and instructed not to discuss the find publicly, but word leaked anyway, as it always does. They found something in the light circle, something not from here, not from now, and they took it, fast. At 3:32 p.m. Eastern Time, the sky over Chicago began darkening again. No clouds, no weather system, just dimming light. But this time, people were ready. Thousands looked up, cameras positioned, recording started. The darkness fell faster than in April. Within 8 minutes, the city was in twilight, streetlights activated, car headlights turned on. And in the darkened sky, witnesses reported seeing something, not a figure this time, lights, multiple points of light, moving in formation. "They weren't stars," said Rebecca Ahn, watching from her office window. "They were too bright, too organized, moving in geometric patterns, like a grid." The lights remained visible for 4 minutes. Then the darkness lifted, daylight returned, the lights vanished. But thousands had seen them, recorded them, posted them, and the collective realization hit like a physical force. Everything was happening at once. Earthquake in Nevada, glowing hail in Oklahoma, river slowing in the south, wildlife fleeing in Wyoming, light column in Oregon, darkened sky in Chicago, lights moving in formation, all within a 9-hour window, across 6 states involving earth, water, sky, fire, and living creatures. This wasn't pattern recognition. This wasn't people seeing connections that didn't exist. This was synchronization, coordination, multiple impossible events converging into a single day.
The glow didn't pulse or flicker. It remained steady, constant, as if powered by something beneath the sand. But when she bent down to examine the sand itself, there was nothing unusual. No visible organisms, no chemical residue, just wet sand glowing without apparent source. Other hikers arrived, all witnessed the same phenomenon, all recorded it. The video spread across social media within hours. By sunrise, park rangers had cordoned off the beach, marine biologists arrived, samples were collected, Geiger counters measured radiation levels, spectrometers analyzed the light spectrum. The findings were simultaneously mundane and inexplicable. The sand was normal, the water was normal, no radioactive material, no chemical compounds, no biological organisms present in sufficient quantities to produce that much light. "We found trace amounts of bioluminescent dinoflagellates," said Dr. Marcus Webb, a marine biologist from the University of Maine, "but nowhere near enough to create the patterns witnesses described. You'd need concentrations 1,000 times higher, and even then you wouldn't get geometric precision." Yet the recordings were clear. The patterns had existed, multiple witnesses, consistent descriptions. "Something created those shapes," Webb admitted. "We just can't identify what." The glowing patterns appeared again the following night. Same location, same geometric precision. This time, park officials were ready. Cameras positioned, observation teams stationed, scientific equipment monitoring continuously. At 3:38 a.m., the glow returned. Circles appeared first, then lines connecting them, then more complex symbols, patterns that held for approximately 40 minutes before fading as the tide rose. "We watched it happen in real time," said Dr. Sarah Chen, observing from a beachside station. "The patterns didn't gradually form, they appeared, section by section, like someone was drawing them." Frame-by-frame analysis of the video confirmed her description. The circles didn't grow or spread, they materialized, fully formed, one after another. "That's not how bioluminescence works," Chen said flatly. "Organisms respond to disturbance. They create scattered light. They don't organize into geometric patterns with measured spacing." But the patterns continued, night after night, always at the same time, always with the same precision. Then reports started coming from other coastal areas. Kittery Point, Maine, similar glowing patterns, circles and crosses. Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, geometric symbols appearing in wet sand, witnessed by early morning joggers. Cape Cod, Massachusetts, dozens of reports, identical formations. The phenomenon was spreading, or more accurately, it was revealing itself across a broader geographic range. Each location showed the same characteristics, glowing patterns, geometric precision, appearing between 3:30 and 4:30 a.m., fading when the tide rose or when dawn approached. "It's coordinated," said Dr. Patricia Nguyen, analyzing reports from multiple sites. "Same time window, same visual characteristics, same geometric principles. This isn't random biological activity. This is organized." But organized by what? Scientists proposed theories. Underwater currents creating sand patterns that trapped bioluminescent plankton. Electromagnetic phenomena interacting with mineral deposits, even gravitational effects from the moon influencing both tides and light-producing organisms. None of the theories accounted for the precision, the timing, the geometric consistency across hundreds of miles of coastline. "We're trying to fit this into natural models," Nguyen said in a private interview, "but it's not fitting.
Every explanation requires assumptions that aren't supported by the data. At some point, we have to admit we don't have a natural explanation. The interviewer pressed, "What's the alternative?" Long pause. "I don't know, but whatever it is, it's trying to communicate something." That statement, made by a respected physicist, shifted the conversation. If these patterns were communication, what were they saying? Amateur analysts began attempting to decode them, overlaying the symbols with ancient alphabets, comparing them to astronomical charts, searching for mathematical ratios. One pattern appeared repeatedly across all locations, a circle with intersecting lines forming a cross inside it, appearing at least once per night, always prominent, always clear. That symbol has ancient roots, noted Dr. Robert Chen, a historian of religious iconography. It appears in early Christian art, in Celtic designs, in indigenous American symbolism. It represents intersection, meeting point, convergence. But convergence of what? The answer came not from scientists or historians. It came from ordinary people who'd been watching the broader pattern of events unfold across America. "It's all coming together," posted at Pattern Seeker 24. "The symbols on the beach aren't isolated. They're appearing now, while the ground is opening, while rivers reverse, while birds fall, while the sky darkens. These coastal signs are appearing during the convergence. They're marking it, pointing to it." The post included a timeline, every major event since March, mapped chronologically, showing the acceleration, the building intensity. And there, at the end of the timeline, synchronized with the coastal symbols, was a simple statement. Something is announcing its arrival, and we're running out of time to prepare. That post went viral, 1.2 million shares in 48 hours, because whether people believed in divine communication or not, they couldn't deny the timing. The symbols appeared as the other events intensified, as the pattern became undeniable. Scripture speaks of signs written in nature, messages placed where they can be not ignored or dismissed. Jeremiah 31:35. "He who gives the sun for light by day, and the fixed order of the moon and the stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar." The verse emphasizes control, order, intentional design in natural systems.
Exodus 11:4-5. The death of the firstborn, not gradual, not selective by species. Death moving through Egypt in a single night, touching livestock, touching life, demonstrating power beyond natural law. Revelation 8:7-9. A third of the earth burned, a third of the sea becomes blood, a third of living creatures in the sea die. The prophecies speak of death arriving suddenly, touching creation itself, demonstrating that control belongs to something beyond human authority. For 2,000 years, those passages were studied as future events, symbolic judgments, theological concepts. But when millions of birds fall from the sky in a single morning without cause, when cardiac arrest touches multiple species simultaneously across 17 states, when veterinarians and scientists have no explanation beyond their hearts just stopped, the theological interpretations become harder to dismiss as mere symbolism. "I don't want to sound alarmist," Dr. Chen said in a leaked audio recording from an internal briefing. "But we need to consider possibilities outside standard scientific models, because what we're seeing doesn't fit those models at all." A colleague asked, "What possibilities?" Long silence. "I don't know, but whatever caused this had reach, precision, and timing. Those three factors together suggest intention."
Another silence. You're saying something targeted them? I'm saying we should stop assuming this was random. The recording was leaked to a fringe science podcast. It went viral within hours. Within days, it had been viewed 12 million times. The mainstream response was swift. Dr. Chen was placed on administrative leave. The recording was dismissed as taken out of context. Official statements emphasized ongoing investigation and cautioned against speculation. But the speculation had already begun, because people weren't just reading reports, they were stepping over dead birds on their way to work, finding deceased livestock in their fields, watching fish float in lakes that had been teeming with life the day before. This wasn't abstract. This wasn't distant news. This was in their yards, on their streets, in their immediate reality. And when reality becomes impossible to explain, people start looking for different explanations. The earth is groaning, posted at Faith and Science 47. Romans 8:22. Creation subjected to frustration, groaning as in the pains of childbirth. Not metaphor, description. The world is responding to something, and it's not random. The post received 456,000 likes. A response came from @formerskeptic_24. I spent 20 years mocking religious people, called them delusional, primitive thinkers. Then I watched the sun dim at noon, watched my backyard fill with dead birds, and now I'm reading scripture for the first time since childhood. Not because I suddenly believe, but because I need a framework that accounts for what I'm seeing. Science isn't providing one. The response received more engagement than the original post. Something was shifting, not just in nature, in collective consciousness. Events that should have been dismissed individually were accumulating into something that demanded interpretation, and the interpretations being reached increasingly pointed in the same direction, not toward climate change, not toward environmental degradation, not toward natural cycles, toward intention, toward design, toward a pattern that felt coordinated rather than random. The silent morning was followed by 3 days of silence in another form. News coverage went oddly muted. Major networks provided brief updates but avoided deep investigation. Social media posts about the die-off faced unusual algorithmic suppression. It was as if the magnitude of the event made authorities uncomfortable, as if acknowledging it fully meant acknowledging something larger than they were prepared to admit. But silence doesn't contain reality. It only delays reckoning. And the reckoning was already building, because while officials urged calm and scientists searched for explanations that fit acceptable models, something else was happening. People were waking up, not to the alarm clock, to the pattern. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The ground opened, water reversed, fire hunted, sky darkened, life died in mass. Each event impossible by itself, each demanding explanations that standard models couldn't provide. But together they spelled something clear, something undeniable, something that made even skeptics go quiet. A message was being written across creation itself, and the question was no longer whether something was happening. The question was how much time is left before the message becomes unmistakably clear.
But on April 27, 2024, millions of Americans experienced darkness at noon, witnessed the sun dimming without cause, felt the temperature drop in clear skies, and the verses stopped feeling theoretical. I'm not religious, posted at NYC Architect. Never have been. But when the sky went dark today and I couldn't explain it, the first thing that came to mind was Matthew 24. I don't know why. I haven't read that chapter since Sunday school 30 years ago, but it just appeared in my head, and now I can't stop thinking about it. The post went viral. 234,000 likes, 67,000 shares. The comments section became a theological battlefield. Believers declaring fulfillment, skeptics demanding scientific answers, and a growing middle group, people who'd never considered prophecy, admitting they didn't know what to think anymore. Because when the impossible becomes visible, when millions witness the same unexplainable events simultaneously, certainty becomes harder to maintain. The darkness lifted, the sun returned, life continued, but something had changed, not in the sky, in perception. People who dismissed biblical warnings as ancient superstition found themselves wondering, what if it's not superstition? What if it's documentation? And if the sun can darken without cause, if water can flow uphill, if fire can hunt, if the earth can open and reveal warnings carved in stone, what else might be written? What else might come? The answer arrived faster than anyone expected, and it came on wings. Or rather, on the absence of wings, because what happened next involved death falling from the sky in numbers that made Kentucky's earlier bird deaths seem like a warning shot. This time, it wasn't thousands, it was millions, and it wasn't just birds. May 3rd, 2024. Ornithologists call it the silent morning. Across 17 states, from Texas to the Canadian border, people woke to stillness. No bird song, no morning calls, no rustling in trees. At first, it seemed peaceful, quiet, a calm start to the day. Then people looked outside and saw the ground. Millions of birds, dead, covering lawns, streets, parking lots, fields, scattered as far as the eye could see. "I thought it was leaves at first," said Barbara Chen, stepping onto her porch in Tulsa, brown and black, covering everything. Then I realized they were birds, hundreds of them, just in my yard. Her yard wasn't unique. Every yard, every street, every open space. Emergency services were overwhelmed within an hour. Calls flooded in from every municipality. "There are birds everywhere. We need cleanup crews. What's happening?" But there were no cleanup crews for this. No protocol, no plan for millions of simultaneous bird deaths across a region the size of Western Europe. The die-off wasn't limited to one species. Songbirds, raptors, waterfowl, crows, starlings, robins, hawks, geese, every bird in the affected zone appeared to have died simultaneously. "It's like someone flipped a switch," said Dr. Keisha Williams, analyzing reports at Cornell. One moment they were alive, the next they weren't. No warning, no gradual decline, instantaneous mass death. Wildlife agencies mobilized. Samples were collected from hundreds of locations. Necropsies performed. Toxicology screens run. Teams worked around the clock searching for a cause. Poison? No toxins detected. Disease? No pathogens found. Collision? No impact trauma. The birds simply stopped, as if their biological systems shut down in unison. Every sample showed the same thing, said Dr. Vincent Reyes, a pathologist reviewing the data. Cardiac arrest, simultaneous, across multiple species. That doesn't happen naturally. Hearts don't just stop in millions of birds at the same moment without a trigger. But there was no trigger. No electromagnetic pulse detected, no sonic weapon, no atmospheric anomaly. The birds died, and no one could explain why. But it wasn't just birds. Reports began coming in from rural areas. Livestock found dead in fields, cattle collapsed where they stood, horses down without struggle or warning. "I checked my herd at 6 a.m., said rancher Dale Hutchins in eastern Colorado. Everything normal. Came back at 8 a.m., 12 head dead. No signs of distress, no foam at the mouth, no bloating. They just died." Veterinarians found the same cardiac arrest pattern. Healthy animals, no underlying conditions, hearts stopped simultaneously. Then came reports of fish,
Massive die-offs in rivers and lakes across the same 17-state zone. Trout, bass, catfish floating belly up by the thousands. Water quality tests showed nothing unusual. No algae blooms, no oxygen depletion, no chemical contamination. The fish died like the birds, like the livestock, all at once, without apparent cause. We're looking at a multi-species die-off across 800,000 square miles, said Dr. Sarah Chen, coordinating the investigation. This isn't localized. This isn't environmental. This is unprecedented. She paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. In my entire career, I've never seen death on this scale happen this fast, and I have no framework for understanding it. The timing didn't escape notice. The silent morning occurred 6 days after the sky darkened, 2 weeks after the Maui fires, 3 weeks after the Mississippi reversed. Another event, another impossibility, another piece of the pattern. And this time, the biblical parallels were impossible to miss.
The official narrative is well documented. High winds from a nearby hurricane, dry vegetation, downed power lines, a tragic convergence of natural factors that created a firestorm. But residents tell a different story, one that doesn't fit neatly into accident reports. The wind was strong, yes, said Kai Pono, a lifelong Lahaina resident who lost his home. But wind doesn't explain what we saw. Wind doesn't make fire jump 4-lane highways. Wind doesn't make flames move in directions they shouldn't. The fire began in multiple locations simultaneously, not one ignition point, multiple. Fire investigators documented at least 7 separate origin sites across Lahaina within a 40-minute window. No power lines down at those locations, no lightning strikes, no reported accidents. 7 fires, 40 minutes, no explained cause. In 30 years of fire investigation, I've never seen a pattern like this, said a retired fire marshal who reviewed the incident reports and requested anonymity. When you get multiple simultaneous ignitions, you're usually looking at arson, but the locations didn't make sense for that. No accelerants detected, no evidence of human involvement. They just started. And once they started, they moved with terrifying intelligence. Survivors described flames that seemed to target structures while leaving surrounding vegetation untouched in places. Houses burned to foundations, while trees 10 feet away remained green. My neighbor's home was completely destroyed, said Rachel Kim, sheltering at the Civic Center. But the palm tree in his front yard, not a single frond burned. How does that happen? Fire behavior specialists struggled to explain it. Yes, wind creates erratic fire movement. Yes, embers can leap significant distances. But the pattern in Lahaina defied conventional models. Fire typically follows fuel and wind, explained Dr. Marcus Webb, a wildfire behavior expert. It's opportunistic. It takes the path of least resistance. What happened in Lahaina, the fire seemed to navigate. It found structures. It surrounded escape routes. It cut off evacuation paths before people realized they needed to leave. Thermal satellite imaging revealed something even more disturbing. The fire's heat signature showed temperature spikes that exceeded normal wildfire ranges. Areas burning at temperatures consistent with accelerants, yet no accelerants were found. We recorded ground temperatures over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit in multiple locations, said a NOAA analyst. That's hotter than most wildfires achieve. That's approaching temperatures you see in structure fires with petroleum involvement. But there was no petroleum, just wood, vegetation, and heat that shouldn't exist. Then there were the cars. Images circulated online showing vehicles melted in ways that confused metallurgists. Aluminum wheels liquefied, glass not just shattered but melted into pools, metal frames warped and collapsed. Aluminum melts at 1220 degrees, noted materials scientist Dr. Jennifer Okoye. We're seeing damage consistent with temperatures far exceeding that. In open air, with organic fuel sources, the physics doesn't add up.
But while investigators debated temperatures and ignition patterns, survivors were processing something else, something harder to quantify: the sound. Multiple witnesses described hearing a roar before seeing flames, not the crackling of burning wood, a deep, sustained roar, like a freight train, like a jet engine. "I heard it before I saw the smoke," said Derek Puolani, "this sound that made your whole body vibrate. Then the sky turned orange, then the fire was everywhere." That roar, documented in cell phone videos and emergency calls, doesn't match typical wildfire audio signatures. Fire crackles, pops, hisses. It doesn't sustain a mechanical roar, unless something is driving it, feeding it, accelerating it beyond natural combustion. Weather data from that day showed wind gusts of 60 to 80 miles per hour, strong but not unprecedented. Maui has weathered similar conditions without catastrophic fire. So why did August 8, 2023 become different? "Something changed," Kai Pono said quietly. "Not just the weather, something in how the fire behaved, like it was looking for us." Scripture speaks of fire with purpose, not random burning, but directed judgment. Nahum 1:6, "His wrath is poured out like fire, the rocks are thrown down by him." Amos 1:4, "I will send fire, and it will consume." Hebrews 12:29, "Our God is a consuming fire." In biblical language, fire doesn't just destroy, it refines, it exposes, it reveals what cannot stand. And in Lahaina, what couldn't stand was stripped away in hours. Historic sites, generational homes, cultural landmarks, reduced to ash. But here's what haunted residents in the weeks after: the selectivity. Certain buildings survived surrounded by destruction. A church stood untouched, while homes on both sides were gone. A single house remained intact on a street where every other structure burned. People called them miracles, said Pastor Michael Torres, and maybe they were, but they also raised questions. Why those buildings? Why that house? What made them different? Some survivors suggested the structures that survived were places of worship, places of prayer, sacred spaces. Others noted the survivors were often those who'd gathered to pray during the fire, who'd called out in desperation, who'd asked for protection when there was nowhere left to run. "I'm not saying God chose who lived and died," Torres said carefully, "but I am saying there's a pattern, and it's a pattern people of faith recognize." The official death toll reached 115, the deadliest wildfire in modern U.S. history. Thousands displaced, billions in damage. But the numbers don't capture what was lost. Lahaina wasn't just buildings, it was history, culture, memory, a connection to the past that existed nowhere else, and it burned in a single afternoon.
And this time, it wouldn't pause again. Dr. Sarah Chen posted at 12:03 a.m. All monitoring systems showing coordinated activity, same pattern as May 24th, but stronger, faster. Whatever showed itself before is coming back, and it's not waiting. The post received 8.2 million views in 4 minutes. At 12:07 a.m., the sky began changing color again, violet tones returning, deepening. At 12:11 a.m., the lights appeared, descending, more than before, thousands more. At 12:14 a.m., the pulse returned, rhythmic, powerful, undeniable. And at 12:17 a.m., witnesses across 47 states reported seeing the same thing forming in the violet sky. The figure, returning, larger, brighter, closer. Not just appearing, descending, coming down. And in that moment, as millions watched the sky, one realization hit with perfect clarity. The warning phase was over. What comes next isn't demonstration, it's a